No esperes toda una vida para poder hacer algo especial.
My name is Bleszinski. The game is Gears of War. Let's check it out.
Lo que estás a punto de ver es la primera conversación o entrevista que Bleszinski tiene con una persona de la comunidad de habla hispana de Gears of War y más específicamente con un mexicano. Esta producción fue posible gracias a Hey Lomsi, Capu, Sergio PR0, Dana Seasons, Edward Crush, Sebastián Yapur y el Gamer Wicho. Esperamos que sea de su agrado. Antes de comenzar, permítanme darles una visión y contexto breve de quién es y quién ha sido Bleszinski más allá de Gears of War. Clifford Bleszinski es uno de los programadores de videojuegos más exitosos de su generación, siendo una de las personas más valiosas para la industria de su tiempo, a pesar de ser muy conocido por su éxito más grande, junto al antiguo Epic Games con Gears of War. La realidad es que este sujeto tiene una historia interesante. Él comenzó a hacer videojuegos cuando tenía 11 años, convirtiendo sus dibujos en píxeles en la computadora de su familia. Creció durante los 80s y fue ganador de una de las primeras competencias en la historia de videojuegos de la Nintendo World Championship en Boston, ganando la mayor puntuación posible en el juego de Mario. La industria siguió creciendo y casi saliendo de la preparatoria, él fue contratado por Epic Games junto a Tim Sweeney, creando su primer juego con ellos, conocido como Jazz Jackrabbit, y tiempo después, un gran éxito conocido como Unreal Tournament, uno de los primeros juegos de disparos en primera persona que le permitían a la gente competir alrededor del mundo. A Cliff le gustaba la atención de la gente y de los medios, haciéndose rápidamente un ícono reconocible en su industria, como la persona que ponían a dar las conferencias y anuncios importantes cuando lo ameritaba, lo que lo llevó a estar en grandes shows de los medios de entretenimiento e informativos masivos de Estados Unidos, como el show de Jimmy Fallon. Para el año 2006, Epic Games lanzaría su proyecto que a la fecha sigue siendo el más ambicioso, Unreal Engine, motor gráfico que Tim Sweeney lanzaría al mundo para que grandes empresas lo utilizaran para poder crear contenido digital. Y para demostrar su poder, dieron a conocer al mundo un juego que revolucionaría el concepto de juego de disparos en tercera persona y que sería un parteaguas en la generación de videojuegos del Xbox 360 e hizo lo que Halo logró por el Xbox original, vendiendo más de 3 millones de copias alrededor del mundo en sus primeros días de lanzamiento y potenciando las ventas del Xbox 360. Rápidamente comenzó el auge y ya conocemos todo lo que pasó en su momento con Gears of War 2 y 3 y la trágica decaída de la franquicia luego de Gears of War Judgment, que fue el primero que no tuvo a Bleszinski como parte del equipo de desarrollo. Luego de esta etapa en su vida, él se retiró de Epic Games con una buena cantidad de dinero luego de la venta de Microsoft de esta propiedad intelectual y decidió probar suerte solo, emprendiendo su propio estudio de videojuegos, Bosky, que hizo algunos títulos que, si bien no fueron un éxito en su momento, fueron grandes intentos por competir con las bestias de aquellos años como Overwatch o PUBG, haciendo Lawbreakers y Radical Hates. Su estudio no tuvo mucho éxito y quebró, pero aprendió mucho de intentarlo y no quedarse con las ganas de hacerlo. Desde hace tiempo está casado con su esposa Lauren, que se dedica a escribir y a hacer streams en Twitch, y viven en Carolina del Norte, donde pasa la mayor parte de su tiempo viviendo lo mejor de la vida. disfrutando de los negocios que puso como inversiones en sus tiempos dorados con un restaurante en donde le gusta ir a tener buenas noches de karaoke con su esposa y amigos. Se hizo productor de Broadway. Recientemente entró a los medios escritos sacando su libro autobiográfico conocido como Control Freak, y hace algunos días lanzó su cómic sobre un perro superhéroe llamado Scrapper. Este es el contexto que necesitan para entender todo lo que se hablará durante la plática del día de hoy. Hay algunos temas que por razones que no se mencionarán, no se pueden tratar durante lo que estás a punto de escuchar. Así que si tenías una pregunta y no se pudo hacer, no es porque a Wicho no se le ocurrió preguntar, sino porque no era momento de dar esas respuestas. La conversación estará en inglés porque Cliff no habla español, pero nos encargamos de subtitular todo para ustedes. Gracias a todos por estar aquí. Wicho me pidió que les dijera que está muy agradecido con todos por permitirle llegar a crear este tipo de contenido para toda la comunidad de Gears. En algún momento dijo que si lograba esto se retiraría de la comunidad, pero lo dijo sin pensar que pasaría rápido. Así que no se asusten, todavía no se va. Maldición. Aún nos falta ver qué pasará con Gear 6 y... Oh, esperen. Parece ser que están aquí. Sin nada más que decir por el momento, disfruten de esto. Los dejo con Wicho y Cliff Bleszinski.
I would just like to have like a conversation, you know, like between one human to another human that knows about gears and gaming and stuff.
That keeps it more natural that way, right?
Yeah. And especially because, I mean, you're the hero of all the guys that are going to watch this content, right? I think it's the first time that actually the Gears of War community in Mexico and Latin America and Spain, for example, like they have an interview with you with a person that actually is from the community. I wanted to make this interview back in the day when you released your book. I've been reading it. Congratulations.
I appreciate it.
I think it's one of the most transparent and honest things you ever created, because it doesn't have any filter on a character. It's actually you.
Wait, are we recording now, or?
We are actually, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if we were like live or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's I started it about 4 years ago. And my advice to anybody considering writing a memoir is to don't ever do it, because there's so much fucking work. And for me, though, at least I saw it as like therapy that I might make a little bit of money on, you know, and, you know, maybe it sold like 5 copies. I don't know. But it's just, you know, to be able to say that I'm a published author is actually really, really impressive. And I actually partnered with a gentleman named Todd Gold. He has written a bunch of books for celebs. He wrote Drew Barrymore's book, Little Girl Lost, back in the day. He's written books for the Osbournes and all sorts of other people. And he was just amazing to work with. And, you know, that's one thing I've found, that over the years, when I'm making something in general, that if I have the right partner, same thing in relationships, right? Like, you know, I need somebody to bounce things off of, right? You know, with all the things that I've done, you know, like working, you know, on Gears with Rod Ferguson and the whole team, like, you know, me in a vacuum, I'm not that useful. I need somebody to just kind of riff things off of, you know?
I think in every single piece of work that you've developed during your life, you've always tried to teach the world about teamwork. And I think that's something very valuable, because it's something that our generations are not used to. You know, like, we live in a very individualistic system that it's actually kind of gross for me.
It's even worse in America. It's that idea of rugged individualism, like pull yourself up by the bootstraps, otherwise you're going to get communism and socialism. And it's like, Jesus Christ. And the fact that my father was, you know, we were raised upper middle class, right? And the fact that my father was able to have the extra money to buy an Apple IIc back in the day that I took to like a fish to water, you know, the fact that he was able to provide, you know, a comfortable existence for 5 boys, that's what they call privilege, you know. And I'm lucky, you know, I didn't come from nothing. I did come from a decent household, but I still, you know, rolled up my sleeves and I, you know, got bullied in school, and I said, I'm gonna fucking make something of myself. Video games were my escape from a childhood that one minute was amazing and the next minute was totally shitty, right?
And talking about those bully and those kind of things, I'd like to thank you. First of all, thank you for sharing your most valuable resource in this life, that is your time with us and with me in this interview or this conversation. I'd like to say it that way. Second, while I was reading this, I was reading about like growing up during the 80s as a young guy that liked video games and all those kind of things, that people like you actually changed the way people see video games right now, you know. So I got like those bully stuff when I was younger, you know. But while I was growing up, the bullying became not knowing how to wall bounce in Gears of War, you know. So it was like, okay, that's a very big step, you know. So I want to thank you for that, because actually right now I can make, I don't know how, life is weird, but I made a living of this, you know, of creating Gears of War content. Since I've been dedicated to this like for the past 8 years almost.
Yeah.
So it's,
well, real quick, how old are you?
how old do I look?
I guess 30.
22.
22. Okay.
That's
Damn
a
it,
bit
that's such a trick question.
No, it's okay. I've been having like a life really, a quick life, you know. Like the past year, I got run over by a car, and I've had like a lot of
Jesus
lessons.
Christ.
Yeah, I had like a lot of lessons during the last years, even dedicating myself to this. But I want to thank you very much for what you created. You know, like I think you are one of the last people that is still in the industry that shows how passion should be like the main thing about creating stuff. Right now, I think that we're living in a world where people are like just working to be able to accomplish their duties on their work, on their contracts, and they're not really like creating something out of passion.
And then they fucking fart out kids entirely too young, and then they have to provide for the kids, and then they're stuck in the trap. My thing is like, I'm lucky enough that I don't like to drive. I like to be driven, right? Used to be the car guy, used to be the Lambo guy, you know. I'm a bit of a drinker, so I never drink and drive. We have this one driver guy who's he's funny as shit. I'm not going to name him, but he basically like he, you know, has like a couple kids with his wife, and he and his wife never have, you know, let's just say quiet moments to themselves, right? And he and I always commiserate. I'm like, dude, did you ever like consider like leaving nice little post-it notes around the house or getting her flowers, you know, like that kind of stuff? I'm like, I'm giving this guy like relationship advice. I'm like, I should be getting this fucking ride for free. But the thing in life is you need fucking passion, right? You need something that gets you out of bed every morning. And you know, the old movie Donnie Darko that was directed by, I think it was Richard Kelly with Jake Gyllenhaal, where there's the whole bit where these like, you know, CG blobs come out of his chest and lead him around. You know, it's like, for me, the term that I always use is, you know, it's find your fireball. Find the thing that makes you motivated. You know, I've been married for over 10 years, right? And I've been with my wife for 13 plus years. And the part of the problem in our relationship was she didn't have purpose. She was Cliff's girlfriend and then Cliff's wife. And now that she's doing the Twitch streaming thing at Leet Lauren on Twitch, and you know, her setup always breaks, by the way. OBS is a piece of shit. And it's just like she's found like, you know, her thing, you know, and she's writing a book now, she's working on a comic, and I'm like, you need that thing, you know, and like it's so many people don't have that purpose in life, just to do something, you know. I'm a big fan of the musical Rent. And there's a line in there where they say the need to express, to communicate, to going against the grain, going insane, going mad. And, you know, there's a reason why Van Gogh cut off his ear, because when you know, get too deep in the weeds of creation, sometimes it can sneak up on you in a weird way.
Totally. Yeah. And congratulations on several things, your relationship. I wanted to make this question like at the end of whatever we were talking, but I mean, I'm going to ask you about several subjects. Of course, Gears of War is one of them, like the lore stuff and Gears, because people will tell me if I didn't, you know. So I'm going to ask some stuff about like your personal, not your personal life itself, more like your personal point of view about life. You know, like I would like to know about like your life philosophy, and I wanted to make this question like for the end, but I think it's a good moment to ask. While I was reading your book, I was like, since I was like younger, I'm used to listen to your interviews and all those kind of things, and they usually ask the same questions, but when you answer, you always talk about your wife, and you always talk about your wife like in a very beautiful, loving way, you know. Even your book, like the first page, it's like for her, right? I noticed that like since the very beginning, like I was like reading it. So I like to ask, what's your definition of love? Because I can read in you that actually love is like a motivation, a motor or something like that. And there's people that actually don't value those kind of things nowadays in this like individualistic world.
I have some friends who are you know, tall, handsome gentlemen, right? And they're single and they're miserable because like with all the dating apps out there, it's utterly terrible. And then I sit there and I look at how young men like flirt with women and the way that they do it, right? And it's just like, dude, it's not that hard. Like, you know, ask her what her favorite childhood memory was, you know, like, do you like to go to the beach? You know, are you a beach or a mountain person, right? And love for me is about giving yourself ultimately to somebody else and being patient and kind. I have this tattoo in my right arm. It says, "It's chaos, be kind." And it's from the comedian Patton Oswalt, did this special called Annihilation. And he lost his wife, Michelle McNamara. She was on some medications. She wound up with pneumonia, and he woke up with her dead next to him. And he had a daughter. And he said, "The hardest day of my life wasn't the day that my wife died. It was the next day when I had to take my daughter to the playground and tell her what happened to mommy." And, you know, in dealing with all of this, he repeated Michelle's term about the world. It's chaos, be kind. And I've had enough loss in my life, which, you know, is in the book. You know, my dad, you know, when I was 15, my nephew died in a car accident at 20. A couple of years ago, I watched my mother-in-law, who was a wonderful, wonderful woman, slowly decline and die of stage 4 lung cancer, even though she never smoked a day in her life. And so I sit there and look at Lauren, and I appreciate her. She's such a loving, giving, sweet, awkward, kind person. And she just, at the end of the day, just wants to play her video games. And so for your generation, being what you said, 22? Yeah. There's, you know, if you want to find a gamer girl, there's, you know, like, you can find one everywhere, you know. For me coming up, video games weren't cool, in spite of the fact that all the kids played them. But if you played them past or in middle school or past middle school, like, it wasn't seen as cool. And there weren't a lot of girls that just played games in general. And I found my wife through video games. You know, we actually met on MySpace. She, you know, she coded her own page and everything like that. And, you know, she was a Counter-Strike pro and whatnot. And she won this video game tournament called Miss Video Game. And I looked at her and I said, "That's my next girlfriend. And I'm going to build up the courage living in our little downtown Raleigh, sleeping with so many random girls in order to like approach her." And that's the thing, is one of my other tattoos says "finally home," because she's my forever person. And it's so hard to find that connection in the world. And, you know, so much of the Gears of War franchise was being developed after the fall of my first marriage. And like the whole Dom Maria thing, like, you know, Maria, the actress, the voice actress that did the little bit of voiceover in there, was done by Courtney Ford, who was a drama friend of mine in high school in California. And, you know, we like had crushes on each other, but it broke my heart. And so then I'm like, I'm going to cast you as a character that has to get killed by his husband. And all jokes aside, what I tell people, you know, the whole saying is write what you know, right? Like, you know, when Gears was being developed, you know, it was during the Iraq War, you know, which in my opinion was a bullshit war. And it was all just, you know, a bullshit war for oil, you know, old men sending young men to die. And it was a thinly veiled criticism of the Bush administration at the time. And so, you know, my wife, you know, working on her book, and like, make it personal. And I always tell that to game developers. Do you remember the game Braid?
Yeah.
By John Blow? I did a podcast with him one time. We were in the Uber on the way back to wherever we were going. And I said, that whole bit with the girl at the end, and you know, you have to reverse it and everything. Like, is that based on like some personal stuff? And he kind of winked at me like, yeah. And that's the thing, is, you know, whenever possible, make your art personal and just make something, you know. Like the other tattoo I have on my left arm, it's from a famous American children's book called Harold and the Purple Crayon. And it says, you know, just create, you know. And I have like multiple IPs that I'm working on right now. I have a comic book that I'm working on. And for me to sit there and to get an email from an artist, you know, about some new art for something that I had in my head, that, in my opinion, is one of the biggest highs that and that's one of the things I loved about when I worked in video games as long as I did, is to just, you know, run around the office and, you know, I type up a description. This is a character named Marcus Phoenix, and everything he touches turns to shit. And then I go into the office and I see, you know, the concept art, and we tune in. I'm like, give him a do-rag and give him a soul patch, you know, and then, you know, we're going back and forth on the voice casting, and, you know, who's going to wind up voicing him and things like that. Like, video games are the ultimate collision of art and science. And in my opinion, it's a fucking miracle that video games ever even ship.
Totally. Talking about voice actors, before I go back to what we're talking, you had something to do with the cast in Spanish?
I didn't actually deal with any of that. I mean, I listened to it, because it's localization is what it is, right? Shout out to Gears' Latino community, because you have always been so tremendously supportive, and I truly appreciate it. And I suspect part of that is because of Dom. Carlos Ferro did such a fantastic job in his performance, and that casting came out of the fact that I was playing a Splinter Cell game, and the Latino actors in it sounded like Speedy Gonzalez. It was like, so it was just corny shit. But Carlos Ferro, he had an accent, but it wasn't so just andale andale arriba kind of shit, right? And for me, I believe honestly representation matters. And I wanted to represent, I wanted the cast of the Gears of War franchise to look like the fucking United Nations in America. I wanted, and that's what I think helped make it a global phenomenon. The fact that people, like African American people saw themselves in Cole, they saw themselves in Jace. Then Anya winds up entering the fray and combat and things like that, winds up kicking ass, and we're not like sitting there staring at our ass the entire time. I mean, these are things that I really, really dictated. I even, went back and forth with an artist to make sure Anya had a modest bosom, as they say. I like big boobs as much as the next guy, but I wanted to make sure she was just a woman who kicked ass, right? Because I'm a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That show got me through my 20s and through my high school trauma. And ironically, my wife looks just like Sarah Michelle Gellar, who I had the biggest crush on at the time. And I'm like, it's all coming together now. And the thing is the thing about video games, Luis, is teach a man or a person to make video games, and they won't want to play them much, because I know how the sausage is made, and I know the amount of hours that I've gone in, and I've seen families crumble from the stress of what it takes to make a video game. But at the end of the day, every conference I went to, whenever somebody would like lift their sleeve up and show me the Crimson Omen on their arm, that is one of the other biggest highs one can imagine, like something that you summoned from a dark period of your life, and you thankfully made a good amount of money on. But for them to scar their body with something that means so much to them is the ultimate honor, in my opinion. And that's why, like, for some reason, Gears became the franchise that people get tattoos for. I don't know why. Like, even when Rod was promoting Gears 4 and 5, like hashtag Gears Inc.
Gears Inc.
Yeah, and it's just it's fucking awesome. And for me, being a well-known video game designer, which that fame is somewhat fading with like Gen Z and whatnot, which is fine. As Mark Rain once told me, I'd rather be rich than famous. I have the best kind of fame, because I only get recognized like once every week or two, right? Somebody comes up, and I can always tell like how old the person is by what part of my work they grew up with. If it was, Jazz Jackrabbit back in the day, or Unreal Tournament, Gears of War, and yes, of course, Lawbreakers, rest in peace. And then it's just to know that you made something that affected people's lives, and then that's the thing is like, I'm 48 years old, but if I died tomorrow, I die happy, knowing that, I provided for my wife, and, even help out my in-laws and my family. And, now for me, I don't want to die, but my thing is, I will always love Gears. It will always have a place in my heart. And it's still, Luis, it just baffles me that Microsoft hasn't reached out to me to have me just at least consult. Like, get me a dev kit for Gears 6. Let me play it. Let me see the scripts. Just let me get my 2 cents. I don't want to direct it, but I think just the PR win alone of me coming back, I think could be fucking huge to help revitalize the franchise, because it feels like to some extent Microsoft, when it comes to Halo and Gears, like I'm not sure what they're doing. It's just frustrating, because it will always be near and dear to my heart. And Lauren always gets the most traction when she plays Gears on her stream, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, what have they got to lose? It doesn't make any sense.
They end up like giving products instead of giving like experiences. That I think that's something that change.
I mean, that's one of my criticisms about 4 and 5 is they're great games, but I think there's a little bit of that heart that's just missing. And
they're great games, but they're not great gears. That's the thing.
Yeah,
that's the way I translate it.
I know Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon's the one who made Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Firefly, a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
And I had a meeting with him in Los Angeles one time, and he said, "Buffy suffer, show good." Right. And that's the thing is, Gears, same thing with, if they want me to consult on the Netflix movie and whatnot, I'm giving this shit out for free right now. Gears is about the horrors of war. It's about suffering. It's about the fact that war is bullshit. the fact that I sit there and I look at what's going on in the Ukraine now, and Putin being such an asshole, and I'm like, dude, like all you're doing is just ruining lives. Like for what? For like, is this your fucking end game? You know, talking about like the Vietnam War, and you know, talking to somebody, I can't remember where the conversation was. Somebody who was a Vietnam veteran, and how, you know, all the soldiers wound up going completely insane out there, right? Like it's just like, war is hell and war is bullshit. Like there's no reason for it. You know, maybe I sound like a dirty fucking filthy hippie, but then you look at the, you know, the American military industrial complex and the fact that there's like a $712 billion budget for it, you know, in order to, you know, make young men and women go and die. It's just like, okay, can we do something better with our time and money? You know, like maybe give people fucking healthcare. This was not a conversation I was expecting to have today, but yeah.
Yeah. Actually, talking about horror and Gears of War, I made an idea, a video specifically talking about this, like for a Halloween special on my channel. Talking about, I'm actually working right now in that with their Unreal editor with Fortnite that they took out. I don't know if you saw all that stuff. That it's actually crazy.
The new creative mode, right?
Yeah. We've been working with the Unreal editor from Gears of War 3 because I don't know how they got it, but they leaked like the Unreal editor from those days. And I don't know if you've seen like the Gears of War 3 PC mod version. It's actually crazy. I'm going to send you like some clips. Like there are like anime characters running out over the maps, and it's something really crazy but very funny. The point here is that I've been like trying to work with this new tool to make experience of Gears of War, because I always thought that, for example, Outlast, you played that or seen a gameplay of that game.
I'm familiar with it, yeah.
And I was like, that will be a game that could be a possibility for Gears of War. Like imagining being a human, a normal human, not from the COG or stuff, and not a human that can like use weapons, you know, like looking at the locusts coming out from the ground on the E-Day, you know, like a horror game where you are experiencing what's like surviving to those days because you don't have weapons, you don't know how to use weapons, and do
it as a civilian child that's been orphaned by war. I have this whole hypothesis that there's the cycle of empowerment in video games, right? It goes back to when we were kids and we were afraid that there was a monster under the bed, right? It goes back to the old movie Poltergeist, where the kid is afraid of the clown in his room, right? Like we've all had those fears, and if you can find that clown and beat the shit out of it, you feel so much better. But then there's a scarier, bigger clown around the next door, right? And it goes back to, you know, anytime there's a turret sequence, you know, where you just mow down a whole bunch of bad guys, it's usually, you know, you come around the corner, there's some bad guys with the turret, you're like, oh shit, I gotta get the fuck down. And then when you finally kill them and get on the turret, and then a bunch of bad guys always spawn, then you're like, fuck all of you now, finally. And I mean, that's the cycle of it all, right? And it's one of those things that, for me, it's the pacing, it's the cycle of human emotions. That's why I love, you know, like Broadway musicals. And you know, tonight I'm gonna go do karaoke, and you know, there's just so many things in this world. This world can be so terrible, but there's so many fascinating things that we can learn in this world if we just open our mind and just pay attention to it, you know, because it's all fucking systems. Everything is systems. It's all code, and I firmly believe that we're in the Matrix.
It's a great thought. Yeah, and it's about, I think that my grandpa used to say something like, enjoy what it's enjoyable and suffer what it's sufferable. Right, so it's something that I think that we should like, try to do more often. It's
so funny, Luis, because you know sometimes those stupid little sayings like can, you know, resonate. Like, you know, it's chaos, be kind, and you know, I realized that, you know, I could, you know, I'm quite comfortable fiscally. You know, I can pay my bills. You know, I can go out for steak once in a while, but you know, learning that, you know, like, you know, the people who stayed at Epic and when Fortnite exploded got exponentially more money. And it took me a long time to deal with that, especially after my studio boss key cratered. And I got a plaque downstairs that says, comparison is the thief of joy. Like, there's always going to be somebody with more money than you, more followers. That's the thing also, by the way, about my wife doing the Twitch streaming thing. She's trying, we're all trying to figure out the fucking algorithm with everything, with Twitter, with YouTube, with Twitch, with TikTok, all that shit, right? It's like a fucking puzzle. It's a maze. And I told her, I'm like, the three things that matter in life are friends, family, and money. Like, you know, you're doing your thing. Just do not obsess about the numbers too much. Like, just be consistent with it. Show up. You know, be funny and just yammer the whole time, right? That's half of, like, you know, YouTube and Twitch is just yammer. Hey, what's up, guys? Like and subscribe. Smash that like button. You know, it's like that kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's the thing. It's, you know, giving purpose.
I think it's about being genuine, also. You know, like
it's about being what?
Genuine. Like when you're genuine in your own intentions, like people notice that. It's well, talking about like that what you just said. we have a phrase here in Mexico that's something like, you don't need to make delicious tacos, you need to make tacos daily. You know, so it's like, that's the way things will work better in anything you want to do, right? So yeah, and I was listening to one of your interviews when you were mentioning something about like, if I can think, laugh, and cry in one day, like I'm doing something, right? So I think that's like a very interesting way to see life right now that you're almost at you're 47 years old, right?
48.
Okay.
But I moisturize, motherfucker.
You look like 20s. Yeah, you look younger than me, to be honest.
You should see my bald spot. Yeah.
So I just think that it's about you have to know that no one is competing in this life, you know, like if you could think about life like into a car and a certain path, you know, like we're not in the same car, we're not going to the same destiny, we're not like going at the same speed.
Yeah, but Luis, good luck telling that to everybody, right? Because like for men, it's and even like when it comes to like money. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
A friend of mine lives literally like right over that way, and she's done really, really well for herself. And she has these like wine dinners for charity, right? And we go there, and like we're lucky we have a condo at the beach, right? Fine, whatever. Nice. But people, they're all like, oh, when we're at our house in Aspen and we go to Colorado to go skiing, I'm like, fuck off, dude. Like, in life is, unfortunately, especially in a capitalist society, is one big dick measuring contest. Yeah. And then when you add in for women the fact that beauty, I look at how much like the amount of shit my wife has to buy so she feels comfortable leaving the house with her little art project of her makeup she has to do, or her hair extensions that cost a ton of money, like, but for this makes her feel good, and I'm like, okay. And for me as a dude, then I'm like, okay, I need to provide, I need to like pay the bills, I need to keep up, and you wonder why people just kind of go mad. Right? Like, it's just, dudes are insecure about money. Women are insecure about their looks and their body. And that's the thing, as much as Kanye West has gone insane, he's like, we're all insecure. I'm just the first to admit it. Right? Like at the end of the day, like, the thing, going back to the misses, we'll get to the Anya thing in a second. I had this idea back when Gears was going to be Unreal Warfare, right? Yeah. Of like radial power-ups. Like if you're adjacent to the medic, you just get healed. If you're adjacent to the ammo guy, you get your ammo back. And it was going to be self-regulating because one well-placed grenade would destroy them all, right? And I believe that when you really vibe with someone, just having them in the room with you is inherently calming and inherently wonderful. But the kicker about Anya is Anya was inspired by a person that I had a fling with way back in the day. And ultimately, when I got around to Gears 3, wound up kind of morphing into Lauren. And Gears 3 ended on a beach because during crunch time, during Gears 3, my escape was our condo at the beach. And that's the thing, that's one of the things that they got with the marketing for Gears 4, is we have a tomorrow with JD, which I thought was like, there's the heart. It's like my wife and I were watching this old 80s sitcom late at night. It's called Cheers, right? It's about a bunch of lovable alcoholics in a bar. And the thing is, it's got the quips, it's got the one-liners, but it's got heart at the end of the day. And that's the thing. Well, it's the same thing with superhero movies too, right? You have to have that gravitas. I mean, I'm a ex-drama nerd from high school. I was the lead in a bunch of plays. My next tattoo is going to be comedy and tragedy masks right here on my wrist. And I like giving people feels. And I think video games at the end of the day have the power to give, in my opinion, more powerful feels than books, than comic books, than musicals, than anything else, because you're the one making the action happen. And when something happens to you, you feel responsible, right? And there's such an interesting dynamic there between the game designer and the player, and it's always been a fascinating medium to me. But mark my words, the amount of work that it takes to ship a AAA game is ridiculous. The kind of person that will sit there at a computer and make an 8 million polygon, however many millions of polygon character. I mean, it's insane. And the fact that you have producers, musicians, voice actors, like texture artists, environment artists, like designers, like all of that, and then when you added the fact that everything has to be a system now, everything has to have seasons. It's just it's unreal, and pun intended. But yeah, some days I miss it, and some days I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good.
I can imagine. And I think Gears of War especially has like, it's not like other games. Like right now, of course, it wouldn't be able to explode the same way because you were like touching very sensitive points during the Gears of War trauma, right? But I like to emphasize, I think that's the word, that Gears of War succeed before the internet and all these kind of things, right? So that's like a very big thing, you know, like without that help, like it transcended.
Well, it's funny because you know, like I'm a huge fan of Britney Spears.
Yeah.
I love pop divas. I just like, because on one hand I love their music, I respect their work ethic, and yeah, I think they're fucking beautiful. And you know, you look at like you know, sometimes I go down the YouTube rabbit hole just watching like Britney Spears videos, and the fact that she managed to pull all of that off before the internet, right? Like, you know, she ruled the world. You know, she was essentially the female Michael Jackson of her day. And like now, like, you know, we have to rely on virality and all that stuff. You know, like with my upcoming comic book, which is about a dog superhero. Long story there. I'm like, you know, I hope it does well, but I'm like, okay, do I have to like do TikToks about this now? Like, and it's funny because I actually had one of the other things I'm studying lately is stand-up comedy. And that's the thing. It's, you know, I literally had a Zoom call a couple days ago with Dane Cook, who for some reason became really hated on the internet, and I don't understand why, but he understood the internet hustle that was necessary, right? You know, back in the MySpace days, he had a bazillion followers on there. The dude sold out Madison Square Garden in New York City in like 2 hours, right? And like I'm like, how did that feel? You know, and I'm sitting there saying this to someone who, you know, demoed Gears 1 at Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, right? But Madison Square Garden's like one of the biggest entertainment venues in the States. And he's like, your ego gets a hold of you. I found that, you know, with my persona, you know, because like on Twitter, I'm kind of playing a character, you know, I'm talking about eating ass and things like that, right? Which, you know, asses need to be eaten. And it's just like studying stand-up comedy and just studying, you know, the structure of it all, right? Like we're going to go see this American comedian, Sam Morril, tomorrow night. And like, for some reason, so many of them follow me on Twitter. And then we're like DMing, like, let's hang out after the show. And I'm like, I think it's because, you know, I did Joe Rogan 3 times. And then, you know, sometimes, you know, my ego gets a hold of me and I'm like, bitch, I did Jimmy Fallon twice and I did Rogan fucking 3 times. And I made $1 billion franchise. Like, you know, what's next? What's next? You know, and for me, I'm like a shark. You know, I have to keep moving. And, you know, the way that I do it is, you know, when I work hard, I work hard. When I play hard, I play hard. And mark my words, I will learn stand-up comedy and I will perform it and I'll hopefully be good at it. You know, going back to the whole like trying something and doing something, you know, when I had my studio with Boss Key, like, you know, when it cratered, like the internet thought it was fucking hilarious. And it broke my heart because I employed 80 people for 3.5 fucking years. And then I'm like, call me next time you do that, motherfucker. You know, not you, I'm saying, you know, the internet, right? It's just like, you know,
I understand.
I knew their spouses, I knew their kids, I knew their fucking dogs. You know, we'd go to lunch every day. You know, we'd have meetings. Like they were my family. You know, and then having to, you know, announce that the studio basically ran out of money just destroyed me for a good fucking year. And that's where the origins of the book came from. Boom.
Great book, by the way. Great book.
Thank you.
I've listened you talking about these stories about people you've known and your own story. I usually, when I talk with people that have like succeed in life under average standards, I like to ask them, and especially you, what's your definition about succeed for you? What's succeeding in life right now? Like after all what you've done, because it's been a lot.
Do you remember Conan the Barbarian? Crush your enemies, drive them before you, and hear the lamentations of their women.
Okay.
For me, it's like I said, money, friends, family. I got into video games because I wanted to make great games. I wanted to be well known for it, and I wanted to make money, right? But at the end of the day, you know, think, laugh, cry, right? And that's the thing. As long as you can pay your bills, figure the rest of it all out. And, you know, just be kind, right? Like, and I just think life's too short to be a fucking dick, you know? And that's the thing is somehow on the internet, I wound up getting this reputation as being some sort of an asshole. And I'm not sure where that came from. I'm like, okay, like in you know, some random troll will like come out of the woodwork on Twitter sometimes. I'm like, what the fuck are you like? I'm like, dude, if you didn't sit on fucking Twitter all day and troll people, you'd actually do something with your fucking life. Pick up the Unreal Engine, you know, get fucking Unity, you know, fucking make some shit in Roblox. You know, like just do something.
I think it has to do with you being confident in an industry where confidence it's an issue.
I've always said this is the thing, exactly my point, is that like if you're a politician, if you're an athlete, if you're an entertainer, if you're a content creator, you're allowed to be confident. If you're a game designer, you're not allowed to be confident, right? And the fact that I was a drama nerd in high school, the fact that I can look at that dead ass fucking camera and fucking say some shit that I thought of, or just give an interesting pull quote, the internet's just like, I don't like him. It's like, dude, fuck off, you know, like, just do something, you motherfuckers. Like, you know, just stop. And the thing is, like, for me in the book, I talk about John Romero, you know, the Godfather, the father of the first person shooter, is a friend of mine, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that when he, you know, being the long haired, handsome dude he is, you know, he's wearing his interesting fashion, his nails are painted. He's literally like, he was like the first video game rock star, right? And the fact that when he started his studio Ion Storm, you know, like, and we all like were rooting for it to fail, and like, and then it did. And then in hindsight, I'm like, why? Like, don't you want your peers to succeed? You know, like, that's the thing is, you know, rising tide raises all boats. Like, I co-own the Raleigh Beer Garden, right? It's like, it's got a Guinness World Record for having like fucking 389 beers on tap. And the first weekend it opened, there's a line out the door, and all the other bars in the neighborhood like were up like 20%. And that's the thing. It's, you know, like, when it comes to, you know, industry and business, yeah, there's competition, but generally speaking, we're all in this together. Like, let's try and be better people. Like, you know, like I said, it's chaos. Be kind.
Yeah, you usually don't know who are you going to see again in the future, right? So it's better to
Well, that's the thing, you know, like, that's me being a bit of a drinker, right? Is the fact that, you know, like, I run into people sometimes, and I meet a lot of people. I'm a very social person, right?
Yeah.
I love stories. I love going out, like, oh, one night we were out at the bar, and then blah, blah, blah. And the thing is sometimes people are like, yeah, we've met before. And I'm like, fuck. And I'm like, was I a dick? They're like, no, you're really nice. I'm like, yes, you know. That's the thing is, you know, I'm like John Wick, right? Like, I'm a peaceful man. But if you push me, I'll get that fucking look in my fucking face, and I'm coming for you, motherfuckers. You know. And that's the thing is, it's actually I can actually disclose this because it's now, it was like 3-4 years ago. There was a wrestler that claimed and sued Epic in Microsoft, saying that we stole his likeness for coal. And like, just when I'm like I'm getting out of the industry, I'm moving on and figuring out what's next. I get a call from my lawyer, and at first, like, I take my phone and I put it down, and then I'm like, no, I should call this guy back. And I wound up getting deposed. And I literally had to sit there in their office, well, they had the stenographer lady and whatnot, right? And they're like asking me, like, you know, do you know who this gentleman is, the wrestler that you allegedly stole the likeness from? I'm looking at him, I'm like, look, motherfucker, I've never heard of this dude. I've never seen this dude in my entire life. You're wasting my fucking time. Get me the fuck out of here, you know? That's the thing. It's like, life, that's the thing is, life is too short. You know, that's the thing is, you know, like, watching my mother-in-law, you know, decline and watched her die in front of me from stage 4 lung cancer. Like, that really just makes you realize, the phrase that I like to use is, whenever possible, make your life like a movie. If you can afford to, sure. But, like, you know, like, Lauren and I, you know, we were in downtown Raleigh one night with friends, you know, going out, you know, having a few drinks, and, you know, we wound up going bar hopping, and we wound up getting caught in the rain. And I pulled her aside and just kissed her. And it was kind of like, you know, this is the famous scene in Spider-Man, you know, where Spider-Man upside down kisses Mary Jane. Yeah, right. And that's the thing about love and relationships in general. Like, you know, you gotta have the hustle of making stuff, but also appreciate the people that are around you that love you and care for you. And again, think, laugh, cry. Right.
At the end of the day, there's a phrase that I read in a book. I don't remember which one it was. It says something like, we are what people felt and think about us when we're not there. Like, that's our essence at the end of the day, right? So I think it's, I mean,
that's your legacy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing is, like, you know, tonight, you know, we're gonna go and you know, do karaoke at my beer garden. You know, I'm thinking I might do a little Biggie Smalls, might do a little Frank Sinatra, right? There's 2 karaoke DJs that we use, a guy named Steve and a guy named Harry. He calls it Harryoke. Get it, Harry?
Oh, nice.
Sometimes we get like only 15 people. Sometimes we get like 40 people there. You know, it's not huge, but he's like, I've been to plenty of karaoke nights that I've hosted. And the reason why this is such a wonderful community, and that's the thing, it's all about community, is that he says it's me. Because what I do is I go around the room, right? And I'm like, oh, you gonna sing? Are you gonna sign up? What are you gonna do? And then I go up there and I sing my ass off. I'm not that good. You know, that's not the point of karaoke. The point is just going for it. You know, half of singing is acting. An old friend of mine taught me once. And then to sit around the room, though, to watch these people, you know, buying beer and cocktails and pretzels and be like, hey, they're paying to see me sing poorly. It's kind of fun. But again, it goes back to a good sense of community. You know, like I have a few friends of mine that were fans of my work, right? That recognize me at like events or at a bar, that we've actually become really good friends. Brix Bree, who actually now works at Epic, she's an absolute sweetheart. Jessie Skelly, who's another sweetheart, and like she recognized me doing karaoke at a rent in a bar one time, and then she's like, "Are you Cliff Bleszinski?" And then we sang from Dirty Dancing, "Now I've had the time of my life," right? We did a duet, and then we just became dear friends, right? And she actually worked for me for a little while at the beer garden. That's the thing about like, if you get a little bit famous, like you gotta keep your ego in check. Like, just don't be a dick, you know? Like, and you know, I'm lucky that I've met a bunch of celebrities. I've been able to become friends with a fair amount of them, and 99% of them have been super fucking cool. Only Jamie Kennedy was a piece of shit. But yeah, like, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, just do something. Just get the fuck out of bed, make something, craft something, you know? Like, if you have a daily grind of a 9 to 5, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine, right? A guy named James Schmaltz, who's a gazillionaire. He made Warframe with Digital Extremes, right? And he told me he read an article from a billionaire and said, you know, how did you do it? And he says, you have to give up your 20s. And I realized, you know, I'm far from a billionaire, I assure you. Like I said, I'm comfortable. But the thing is like, you know, developing, you know, all the games that I did, like, you know, I didn't start drinking until I was like 25, made up for it since then. And it's just one of those things, like, for me, learning industries it's fascinating. Like, you know, becoming a Broadway producer and seeing the capitalization that it takes to make a Broadway show, and then going to see a Broadway show and be like, that looks like it cost about 20 million to capitalize. Like, and then, you know, learning the restaurant industry and, you know, making sure we own the land, you know, like, and then I love the art of learning things. Like, you know, I think about, you know, back in the day, I shipped Unreal and Jazz Jackrabbit 2 in the same year. Like, I was a fucking beast back then, you know, and now I'm like getting up at noon being like, all right, let's get a mimosa and just go and Reddit, you know. But I still, you know, I still have multiple irons in the fire with other things. So you got to find that fireball that gets you out of fucking bed.
It's really interesting for me, like, listening all this coming from you. Back in the day when Gears 5 came out, they were being very ambitious on their project and they were very confident on what were they doing. Sadly, it was not a good result at the end of the day. But for example, here in Mexico, knowing that it's like a place where they have a lot of audience, they made a partnership with one of the the main television. It's like the main television of Mexico, you know,
like Univision or
something like that for you, yeah. But for Mexico, like, we only have two big television competitors in Mexico, and one of them was like having stuff with Gears of War, and they were having like they were going live on the internet and on TV, right? So I used to they contact me to write several stuff and produce several content about like the story of Gears of War, you know, like the history behind the development and all those kind of things. And I talk about like all your life, or what people knows, you know, like what is out there in the internet and all these kind of things. Yeah. And it's very interesting for me having this experience and this opportunity to talk to you and knowing like what's behind of all those kind of stories, especially after I've been reading your book, right? So yeah, I think what you mentioned about like the way you see life after you saw people dying and the way like that changed. I was listening to this part when you mentioned that if your dad wouldn't die back in the day, like, you wouldn't follow this path, right?
The fact that like if my father hadn't died, I wouldn't have gone down the video game path, right?
Yeah. Like that's something pretty interesting. Just as a little context, I feel very identified with you because the person that showed me how to play Gears of War, mainly it was because I had cousins that were playing Gears, but I was not into the Xbox thing because my parents were like, you know, it's like, hey, go to school, like, don't be playing video games. So I was always like being bullied, you know, in the game, like, you know, by my cousins and stuff. So I met another guy that it's another cousin that we weren't like so close until we knew that each other played Gears. He was like a beast in the game, and he showed me how to play all that. He was younger than me, and when Gears of War 3 ended and stuff, like he began doing his life and all those kind of things, I was creating content. I was like studying at the same time, and of course when your parents say like you need to study to make a good life and all those kind of things, I was like beginning to have money and stuff. And this guy, it's called Mauricio, he had cancer. when I was into a decision of like I had to go to extraordinary exam, you know, for the school, or I had to go to Vancouver to play Gears 5. I was like under my dad's pressure, you know, like of the school, and I was like, come on, like I can make something about this, you know. My cousin was like, one of the last conversations we had was something like, okay, like if I had the time that you have, like I would totally prefer to go to these experiences than like going through what your family is telling you, right? When he died, it was like, I'm going to live what he can't live now, you know, like I'm going to try to live like as best as possible and following like the kind of dreams that he could have had if he was in my position, right?
That's fucking heavy.
I still say sometimes when I tell this story in moments like this, because this is actually something very, I think that I'm not conscious about what we're doing right now, but this is something really heavy for my career, you know, like talking with the guy that made the game that I played, and I have a career on the content creation, you know, it's something really hard and great. And I say things like, okay, if God has Wi-Fi, I hope he can see this kind of content, you know, because I would really appreciate that.
That's a cool quote.
So
Luis, I struggled when my father died. Like,
yeah.
For quite some time. Like he was very loving, but he was kind of an asshole at the same time, right? And the thing is, you know, I used to go out back, you know, have a couple Dos Equis and just look up at the moon and just think, you know, is he looking down on me? Is he proud of what I've done? You know, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, the parental influence in your life is so huge and so strong. And I love how you're like, and then I got this cousin, I got this cousin, I got this cousin. I'm like, this Mexicans roll deep, motherfucker.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law's family's from Zacatecas.
Oh, nice.
And I went to a couple of their family barbecues, and man, I just can't keep track of fucking everybody there. What I tell people, you know, when it comes to life is don't die 5 miles from where you were born, you know. And it's the funny thing about one of the jokes that I'm working on. It's like, you know, living in the South here, above my old studio Bosque, there was event space for weddings, right?
Yeah.
And I get in the elevator and, you know, I inevitably see this lovely young 22-year-old girl, you know, getting ready to get married. And I'm like, dude, 22 Southern girls get married at 22 so they can get divorced before 30. So if you really want to get rich in the South, open an event space that has a family law like place attached to it. And I just, you know, I've seen so many people just get married way too soon. And I remember, you know, being out at a bar back in the day, and I overhear this young girl like, this guy was talking to me and he was like 30, and I'm like, shouldn't you be at home with kids? And I'm like, bitch, life starts at 30, you know, like just fucking like, what, like, is that your one goal in life? Like I love kids as long as I can give them back. You know, I love being an uncle and occasionally a drunkle, you know. And, you know, like my niece, Riley, just hit 12, and, you know, she's just the sass on that kid, you know, and she just loves, like, she's like, to Lauren, she's like, I don't like your hair color like that. Do you just do that for Uncle Cliffy? You know, like that kind of, like, you know, the truth from the mouths of kids, right? And it's just like, I think kids are parasitic sociopaths, honestly. And people are like, do you have any kids? And I'm like, none that I know of. You know, life is a series of memories. You know, you know, they say in Terminator, no fate but what we make.
Yeah. What you've said just made me think about, like, if you could give an advice, or you can give, like, about your experience, of course, and you could talk to everyone that is going through their 20s. For example, I'm going through the 20s crisis, you know, like the famous 20s crisis. And I know that there's a crisis for the 30s and for the 40s and stuff. Would you have an advice for each decade with what you know now that you would love to hear from someone as you when you were younger?
Work hard, play hard.
In every single decade.
Don't be a dick, right? And find your fireball.
Thank you very much for.
And I just want to say to the Gears Latino community, thank you from the bottom of my fucking heart for all of the support over the years. It's just to know that people out there love what I worked so hard on really honestly means the fucking world to me. So thank you so much.